If you were at a G Herbo concert in the last 4 or 5 years, you and the other hundreds of fans would have paid nothing less than $100, or even as high as $400 more for the tickets. But the man you paid money to watch didn't even transport himself to the venue with his own money, not because the organizers or show promoters chose to fly him down with a private jet or an exotic vehicle, but because G Herbo preferred to use stolen credit card information to fund his exotic lifestyle. So you could be at Herbo's concert screaming your lungs out as you sang along to the lyrics and having a good time, but what you didn't know is that you might have also paid for his designer clothes, shoes, rings, rocks, and even the exotic whip that brought him to the venue. How is this possible? Well, Herbo preferred to steal the identity of people like me and you to fund his celebrity lifestyle. From March 2017 to November 2018, every time you saw G Herbo post a picture in a private jet, with a whip, in a luxurious hotel, or on an exotic vacation, let's just say he preferred to pay with stolen credit cards and anyone else's account information he could lay his hands on. To put it in clear terms for you, G Herbo was carding and involved in wire fraud. According to the feds, Herbo and 5 of his homies, Demario Sorrells, Stephen Hayes, Joseph Williams, Terrence Bander, and his show promoter Antonio Strong were all indicted on conspiracy to commit wire fraud and several counts of aggravated identity theft. But you got to wonder, why would a rapper who reportedly has a net worth of $4 million be using fake credit cards to fund his lifestyle? This could be because of 2 reasons. G Herbo might be one of those rappers who lived a fake life and never lived within his means. On the other hand, Herbo's situation could also be one of those where you could take the boy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the homie. Herbo grew up in a place in Chicago that the locals now call Terror Town. And for a hood to earn this name, that tells you that this isn't a place where you want to be caught lacking. Because while the south side of Chicago and O Block in particular has been described as the most dangerous block in Chirac, the east side of the city where Herbo is from is just as notorious, if not more. Lil Herb grew up in a hood where anyone's life could be taken at any minute, and even young kids could unfortunately catch a bullet. You had to be a gang member to survive in these streets, and G Herbo was a member of the Black P Stones.
The mid to late 1960s were among the worst of times, and one of the reasons was the gangs. In the 60s, the biggest, baddest gang of all was the Blackstone Rangers. One of its organizers was a skinny kid from Aberdeen, Mississippi, an unlikely-looking leader by the name of Jeff Fort, known from his earliest days on the street as Angel.
The Black P Stones that G Herbo belongs to were originally known as Blackstone Rangers. This gang was formed back in 1959, and Herbo belongs to a renegade set that emerged from the Black P Stones, who are known as No Limit. No Limit do stay true to their name, as they truly have no restraints when dealing with their ops. They hold territory in the south side of Terror Town. You see, Terror Town is home to 4 streets, the 75th to 79th streets. G Herbo and his No Limit goons hold territory in 79th Street. One of No Limit's ops, a group called Black Mob, control the northern part of Terror Town, specifically the 74th to 75th Street. Black Mob are seen as the OGs of Terror Town, but No Limit's deadliest rival is a gang called Lakeside. Lakeside is also located in the south side of Terror Town, like No Limit. The 2 groups share an overlapping area, and this is why the 2 gangs are always beefing. While G Herbo and the other No Limit members belong to Black P Stone, members of Lakeside belong to the Gangster Disciples and Vice Lords. Members of Lakeside are also called Cutthroat, and sometimes they also refer to themselves as KTS, which stands for Kill to Survive. In these streets, you either kill or be killed. And for the young men who get mixed up in these gangs, every day is another 24 hours. They have to worry about being clipped or eventually have to kill their ops so they could survive. Some of the most popular members of Lakeside, or KTS, are Posto, Nutso, and the Deadly Brothers KTS Dre and KTS Vaughn. While some of the most popular members of No Limit are Chicago legend Lil Bibby, Bibby's brother G Money, Cairo, G Mineski, No Limit's most feared shooter Mad Max, or Killer Chris, and of course G Herbo. The beef between Lakeside and G Herbo's No Limit became an all-out war in 2010 when Nutso was killed by No Limit allies, the Muskegon Boys. The Muskegon Boys are a set filled with gangster disciples just like Lakeside, but they simply can't stand each other. They were originally known as Muskegon Boy Gangsters, and they hold territory in the 78th Street of Muskegon Avenue. There was a time that the Muskegon Boys and Lakeside used to get along, but after they became ops, the Muskegon Boys became allies with No Limit. The alliance between these 2 sets then became known as NLMB, which stands for No Limit, Muskegon Boys or Never, Leave My Brothers. And if you are a fan of Chicago drill, you must have heard of NLMB, because the likes of G Herbo and Lil Bibby have mentioned NLMB on many of their songs. And when G Herbo has any run-ins with Uncle Sam, he simply maintains that NLMB isn't a gang and that it stands for Never Leave My Brothers. But in the streets, everyone knows it means No Limit Muskegon Boys. Some rumors even speculate that the men G Herbo was carding with might just be members of the Muskegon Boys. But in June 2008, the Muskegon Boys started one of the deadliest gang wars in East Side Chicago. At around 7:45 p.m. on the 19th of June, Lakeside member Larry Pickens, aka Nutso, was sitting on his porch at 7815 South Marquette Avenue when he was shot and killed right in front of his home. Nutso's death began a spate of retaliatory killings between NLMB and Lakeside. However, the first NLMB member that was killed during this period wasn't even popped by Lakeside, but another gang whom NLMB had beef with, Black Mob. Black Mob and NLMB initially got along together, but their beef began because of a turf war. No Limit member Vito was allegedly selling drugs on Black Mob turf. And if you know anything about gang warfare, then you would know that this is one of the gravest sins that a gangster could commit. It's a blatant form of disrespect, and it's equivalent to giving your ops the middle finger, because for these gangs, turf means money, and having another gang member selling your hood is enough reason for the homies to get active. Vito was attacked by the Black Mob members in the area. He was beaten for not paying tax and showing respect to the Black P-Stones in the area. But Vito wasn't no slouch. He wasn't just going to take the beating without doing anything about it. However, the number one rule for revenge against a gang rival is that you simply cannot miss. You don't get no do-overs, and there is no margin for errors. Unfortunately, Vito learned this the hard way. He allegedly not only shot at a Black Mob member, but he did it in front of his ops family members, and he even missed his target. But luckily for Vito, the OGs intervened and tried to resolve this with no bloodshed. On the 27th of April 2009, Vito was approached a few blocks away from his home and given a chance to apologize, but the NLMB member refused to apologize or accept any sanctions. Vito didn't realize the men who approached him weren't messing around. He was allegedly shot 5 times in front of a large crowd. He was pronounced dead at around 2:18 a.m. Vito's death began the war between No Limit and Black Mob because he was one of the most liked members of NLMB, and even Herbo pays tribute to him on several songs. On his track Computer Freestyle, Herbo raps, "Pull on the 4 and let off 16. That's for CMOE, and I dropped the 5 for Vito. You want smoke? Let me know." After the death of Vito, Herbo and other NLMB members started to refer to themselves as BMK, which stands for Black Mob Killer, and GDK, which stands for Gangster Disciples Killer. At this point, the East Side had fully evolved into Chirac because there was truly no limit to the blood these young men were willing to shed to get back at their ops. Herbo and his homies were seen in various pictures doing the GDK sign. NLMB now had ops on almost every part of Terrortown. And since they were beefing with both Black P-Stones and Gangster Disciples, No Limit members also started to refer to themselves as EBK, which stands for Everybody Killers. And unfortunately, Vito isn't the last life that was lost to this war. One of Herbo's childhood friends was shot and killed on the 2nd of July 2009. At around 10 p.m., NLMB member Prince Chico was shot in the head near 79th Street and Yates Avenue. However, the following year wasn't easy for the NLMB boys either. This time, they lost one of their most loved members, 19-year-old Faison Robinson, aka Fazo. On the 12th of April 2010, Fazo was shooting dice with his friends on the 2900 block of East 79th Street. But after some time, the game got so heated and the homies started exchanging bullets. By the time the cops arrived at the scene, Fazo had been shot in the back and was rushed to the South Shore Hospital, where he unfortunately passed away at 9:50 p.m. Fazo's death was a big loss to NLMB. In fact, Herbo named his 2014 debut mixtape Welcome to Fazoland as a sign of respect to Fazo. No one was arrested for the death of Fazo, but word on the street was that the hit was carried out by Lakeside. However, some NLMB members state that Fazo wasn't even killed by the op, and some bizarre rumors even claim that Fazo was killed by his uncle. Fazo was a top member of the Muskegon Boys, and his name was feared on the streets. But the bloodshed and violence that Fazo witnessed while he was alive didn't stop even after he died. A year after Fazo passed away, his family and friends organized a memorial barbecue in his honor at 79th Street and Escanaba Avenue. But this celebration would soon turn to a crime scene. At around 8:30 p.m., a car pulled up next to the venue, and someone inside rolled down the window and started shooting. 4 grown men and a 10-year-old boy were all pierced by bullets, but luckily, none of them lost their lives. And from here on, this war only escalated and became even deadlier. 2 Black Mob affiliates were allegedly killed by NLMB in a space of months. One of them was 20-year-old Hakeem Graham, who was shot multiple times on the 6th of June, 2011, while the other was 18-year-old Rayvon Martin, who was shot execution-style near a bus stop on the 1st of November 2011. And unfortunately, we haven't even seen the worst of the killings in this story. Terrortown only gets bloodier as bodies continue to drop on every block of these streets. For the residents of Terrortown, the streets are like a battlefield with death lurking in almost every corner and on every block. The friend they saw in the morning might just be the victim being talked about on the news news and whose funeral is being organized later in the same day. There was truly no end in sight to the violence in Terrortown. And on the 19th of February 2012, one of the bloodiest killings happened in NLMB territory. At around 7 p.m., some Lakeside members were driving through No Limit turf looking for ops to slide on. They eventually spotted a large group of No Limit members standing in front of a liquor store on the 2500 block of East 79th Street. One of the men in the car allegedly leaned out through the window and started spraying bullets at anyone and everything he saw. 5 people were injured, and one of them was a 14-year-old, while 2 other people also died immediately at the crime scene. One of them was 53-year-old Gregory Glindsey, also known as Alamo, and the other was 19-year-old Jamal Harris, aka Rock. Rock's death truly changed No Limit forever. The NLMB boys started to refer to their turf as Rock Block. This is why G Herbo refers to his hood as Rock Block, and you must have also heard him mention Rock Block on numerous songs. However, G Herbo almost didn't get a chance to become a rapper or drop any bars at all. Herbo is one of the few who turned their pain and loss in the streets to music, which eventually helped him survive and make it out of Terrortown through music. But in August 2012, Lil Herb himself was almost clipped. On the 23rd of August 2012, another mass shooting targeting NLMB members happened in No Limit territory on the 7800 block of South Essex Avenue. This shooting happened only a block away from where Rock was killed. The shooting was another classic drive-by shooting. At around 9:15 p.m., 2 people leaned out of a moving vehicle and started shooting at a gathering of people. 8 people were injured in this shooting, and all the victims were between the ages of 14 to 28. A 28-year-old man was shot in the knee, a 20-year-old man was shot in the leg, a 19-year-old woman was shot in the arm, a 16-year-old boy was shot in the foot, another 16-year-old boy was shot in the leg, a 15-year-old boy was shot in the back of the neck, a 14-year-old boy was shot in the leg, and another 14-year-old boy was shot in the arm. The only good news from this incident is that none of these people lost their lives to the injuries. However, it seems G Herbo might have been one of the victims of this shooting. Herbo stated in interviews that he was in the shooting that hit 8 people, including his 13-year-old cousin. But this wouldn't be the only time that G Herbo barely escaped being killed. Herbo stated that he was once shot in the foot.
You got shot in the foot before, right?
Yeah.
How was that just a result of you being in the streets, or was it like just kind of some accident type of shit, or was it like a
Yeah.
did that change your mindset as far as like, damn, you know, I gotta...
I ain't gonna lie, bro, I called a blessing.
And the other time Lil Herb was shot, the only thing that prevented a bullet from lodging in his head was his hat.
You wouldn't even believe, I don't even be telling people this, bro. When I got shot in the foot, my hat got knocked off. Like, a bullet went over my hat. I had my hat on like this, like on some Swiss Beats ass shit.
Right.
Like this, you feel me? Outside. Bullet knocked my head off. Like, I picked my head up, bullet hole in my shit. My head was hot. I thought I got hit in the head, I swear to God.
After G Herbo and his cousin were shot by the ops, only one thing was on his mind. He wanted to get back at his ops. Herbo was so desperate to get revenge that he made it clear to the world what he was planning. G Herbo first tweeted about following the shooter, and then he put out another tweet stating that he just got off the phone with his own shooters, demanding that he needed to see some action on the news. At this point, Herbo was almost snitching on himself, which tells you just how much he wanted revenge. But Herbo didn't stop here. He was having his own yay on Twitter moment, only difference is that he wasn't talking about his wife or kids. 2 days after his last tweet, Lil Herb put out another tweet. He stated that his aunt just told him that 3 people were killed in black mob territory, and less than an hour after his previous tweet, he revealed that his shooters are still in the streets ready to slide for him. However, despite G Herbo's Twitter threats, members of Lakeside weren't deterred at all. Instead, they seemed to become even more daring. KTS Dre and KTS Vaughn began a YouTube vlog showing themselves in No Limit territory mocking G Herbo and the entire NLMB. They made several videos claiming that not only were their ops nowhere to be found, but the ones driving past them in cars were too scared to approach them.
It's 10 o'clock, G, where the f is y'all at? And we was on the hit, boy, y'all lucky y'all ass ain't out here. And I seen some of you niggas just ride past in them cars. I don't know if that was you or not, Lil Herb. Your ass was in one of them cars, man.
KTS Dre and KTS Vaughn released several other videos of them messing around in No Limit territory and using it to gain more clout. These 2 brothers weren't social media gangsters. Vaughn and Dre had allegedly dropped several bodies on the streets of Terrortown. The duo were born in one of those families where gang memberships are passed down from one generation to another, a sinister bloodline where children had become gang members even before they learned to say their names. Vaughn and Dre's father was an OG called KTS Vinny. Vinny was eventually murdered in the streets, but his son sons have continued his street legacy. The brothers had become the most notorious Lakeside members that NLMB hated the most, and in the coming months, KTS and NLMB lost more members to this war. The next No Limit member whose death really affected Lil Herb was Pistol P. At around 6:50 p.m. on the 3rd of July 2013, Rayford Brown aka Pistol P was on the 2400 block of 79th Street when the gunman jumped out of a green vehicle. Pistol P realized this was death staring him in the face and began running, but before he could get away, he was shot in the back and he collapsed on the 7900 block of South Phillips Avenue. Pistol P later passed away at the Northwestern University Medical Center. Pistol P's death was allegedly a targeted retaliatory killing. He was popped by black mob members, as he was allegedly responsible for the death of Hakeem Graham, a black mob whom I mentioned earlier. G Herbo named his second mixtape the Pistol P Project in honor of his dead friend. But 38 days after the death of Pistol P, G Herbo and NLMB would suffer an even more devastating loss with the death of No Limit member Jacoby Herring aka Kobe. This time, G Herbo was even present at the scene of the murder. Lil Herb was shooting dice with Cairo, other No Limit members, and of course Kobe. After the game ended and the homies were all heading home, Kobe decided to walk home rather than ride with his friends. 21-year-old Kobe just wanted to be alone, but for the ops, this was the opening they needed. At 4:02 a.m., just after partying with his homeboys, the ops pulled up on Kobe in front of a McDonald's restaurant on the 2400 block of East 79th Street, and he was shot multiple times. But that might not even be the last time Kobe was shot. Some rumors state that even after he had collapsed, one of the killers came down from the car and put a bullet in his head just to make sure he didn't survive. And immediately Kobe was shot. Herbo and Cairo heard the gunshots, whipped out their straps, and rushed towards the scene. Unfortunately, by the time they got to the spot, it was too late. They found Kobe's body on the streets, but Kobe himself was no longer of this world, and the shooters were nowhere to be found either. Kobe's death was one of the most significant losses to NLMB. This is why G Herbo named his next mixtape Ballin' Like I'm Kobe. He even had Kobe's headstone as part of the cover art for the project.
And we was together, like we was outside like 4 in the morning, just on the block chilling, shooting dice, all type of stuff. Just walked off and we heard shots going off, like a lot of shots, you feel me? So we just on there on the block, and my homie like, man, this is Kobe. Kobe just walked off. We hear all them shots, so we get to the scene, and I see my homie out there dead, you know what I'm saying, laid out.
Following the death of Kobe, NLMB were desperate for revenge. Word on the street is that several members of No Limit were driving through enemy territory hoping to catch an op lacking. And one of their enemies that NLMB was desperate to get back at is Lakeside member Pasto. Pasto was allegedly involved in the shooting of Kobe. He was the most popular Lakeside member after KTS Von and KTS Dre, and he was known for mocking his dead ops on social media. However, it was hard for NLMB members to get back at Pasto because he was in jail. He was released on the 18th of November 2013. And to show you just how much NLMB members wanted Pasto, it took just 5 days after he became a free man for them to pop him. Pasto, who was just 18 years old, was shot in the head in the first floor hallway of the 2700 block of East 80th Street. He was found laid out on the floor, drenched in his own blood. Pasto passed away at the Northwestern Hospital at 11:50 p.m. Pasto's death was seen as a major win for NLMB, and even after his death, the likes of G Herbo made sure to mock him on Twitter and on several songs. On songs such as Zico Pack, and Who Run It, Pasto was fast becoming the Tuka of Eastside Chicago. And G Herbo almost took the disrespect to another level when the rumors started flying around that he was going to start a cannabis company called Pasto Canna. However, even after taking out one of their top rivals, NLMB were not done just yet. In early 2014, NLMB members allegedly almost caught KTS Von lacking. Von was shot in the chest and spent several weeks in the hospital. And because of how serious his injuries were, Von also lost a lot of weight during his recovery process. However, the next time No Limit members pulled up on KTS Von, unfortunately, they did not miss. On the 23rd of June 2015, Von was chilling outside an apartment on the 7500 block of South Ellis Avenue. And for a man with countless ops, you would expect not to leave himself so vulnerable. KTS Von was apparently high on pills, and unlike the last time he was attacked, Von was not only shot, he was also stood over. At around 2:05 p.m., his ops spotted him from an SUV, slowed down, and opened fire. But these men didn't want a reoccurrence of the last time Von was shot. So, even after he was knocked down and writhing in pain, the shooters came down from the vehicle and rained more bullets on Von, making sure they emptied their clips before leaving. This was like death by a firing squad. The only difference is that the shooters were not sanctioned by the man. KTS Von was shot countless times, including twice in the chest and once in the head. One thing was clear in this incident: the goal of the shooters was to ensure that KTS Von had no chance of surviving this shooting. Unfortunately, he didn't. Von died at the crime scene. And for No Limit, they had successfully taken out perhaps their biggest ops. KTS Von aka Big Cutthroat Da Smoker was the biggest prize and trophy that NLMB wanted, and perhaps the only other rival whose death would mean just as much to NLMB is Von's brother KTS Dre. Back in April 2020, KTS Dre was arrested for a gun charge. Dre was eventually granted a bond and placed under house arrest. He was only allowed to leave home for 4 hours every Thursday. However, Dre would eventually violate the conditions of his bond and was sent back to the Cook County Jail. Dre's lawyer called for a bond hearing and got the court to grant him a new bond for $5,000. KTS Dre's fiance posted his bail on Friday and he was to leave Cook County on Saturday. But despite securing his release, Dre never made it back home. At around 8:50 p.m., just after walking out of jail, Dre was standing in the 2700 block of South California Avenue when a car pulled up next to him and two men fired dozens of shots at the Cutthroat member. Dreco was hit a total of 64 times.
Good evening, guys. Yeah, the first of those shootings happened on Saturday evening just before 9. A man named Lundre Sylvester was leaving the jail. He went by the rap name KTS Dre. He'd just been bailed out, and police say he was ambushed by two men who got out of a vehicle near the jail. Sylvester was shot as many as 64 times and pronounced dead at Mount Sinai.
Just like his brother, KTS Dre was killed in a drive-by shooting. Just like his brother, Dre's death was clearly used to send a serious message to other Lakeside members. And just like his brother, Dre was shot a ridiculous number of times to ensure he had no chance of surviving his injuries. Even after he was killed, KTS Dre's life was still being influenced by the ops. Dre's mother posted on Facebook that they couldn't have a proper funeral for him because they were worried that his enemies might shoot up his funeral. NLMB truly had no limits, and KTS Dre's death shows you just how brutal the gang G Herbo belongs to can be. And a no-limit member with such a storied history like G Herbo would have no issues committing a victimless crime like the wire fraud he's being accused of. You already know that Lil Herb denied these allegations. In fact, he even released a song titled Statement just to debunk the allegations. On the song, Herbo referred to the war with Lakeside and Black Mob as he rapped, "I ain't lying, they was winning, till we started spinning back." Then he went on to talk about the allegations with the lyrics, "Ask about me, I ain't never been a fraud. I went hard from the start. In my city, I'm a god." However, even after initially refuting the allegations, and after jumping in the booth and dropping some bars to deny these allegations, well, on the 19th of July and after some soul searching, Lil Herb changed his mind and realized he was guilty of the allegations. You see, after claiming he was not guilty, Herbo then made false statements to federal agents claiming that he never worked with or was assisted by his show promoter Antonio Strong. He had no direct relationship with Strong. He never received anything of value from Strong, and he never gave Strong any money. But after things started to get heated and real, G Herbo realized that honesty is indeed the best policy, because lying to the feds will bag him 5 years in prison and a 250 grand fine. G Herbo accepted a plea deal that would see him spend only 5 years in prison rather than the possibility of spending 20 years in jail if he is found guilty after a trial. The problem here for G Herbo is that every conversation he had with his show promoter about using stolen credit cards to fund his expenses were done in the DMs. G Herbo and his show promoter provided the feds with an arsenal of evidence by talking about most of their dealings on Instagram. Herbo and his goons used the stolen credit cards for private jet charters, to rent exotic cars like the Mercedes-Benz 5560 and a Cadillac Escalade, to rent a villa in Jamaica, and also to purchase designer puppies. Herb ran a scheme that was too good to be true. He uses the stolen credit card information to pay for all of his luxurious services. The money is then deducted from the credit card owner's account. The victim then notices the scam and calls it in, and the company is eventually forced to shoulder the expenses. Of course, by the time this fraud is exposed, G Herbo and his associates would have left the location or cannot be reached by any means. It's a con even Charles Ponzi would be proud of. G Herbo's sentencing is scheduled for November 7th, 2023. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can also click on the card on your screen, and I'll be waiting on the other side with more content.